When I woke, there was a warm weight pinning me to the mattress. For a second I thought it was just another nightmare from the war, bodies, claws, smoke. Then the scent hit me, wild flowers and wood smoke, threaded with the unmistakable sweetness of omega. My eyes snapped open. A woman was sprawled across my bare chest, cheek tucked over my heartbeat, one arm draped possessively around my ribs. Pale hair spilled over my skin in a silver-gold curtain. Her small nose nuzzled unconsciously at my sternum each time she breathed in. And every inch of her was pressed snug against a very, very naked alpha king. "What the hell?" I breathed, voice hoarse. The woman stirred. Her lashes fluttered, revealing eyes the color of melted amber. For one suspended heartbeat we just stared at each other, me, frozen in shock, her pupils blown wide in sleepy confusion, before she jolted like she'd been burned. "Oh, moon above!" she gasped, rolling off me in a tumble of blankets. "Your Majesty, I beg your pardon!" I dragged the sheet up around my hips, heart hammering hard enough to shake the headboard. "Start talking," I managed. "Who are you, and why were you sleeping on top of me in my own bed?" She scrambled to kneel at the side, cheeks flushed, hair wild. "I'm Alara, my king. Your new housekeeper. From the Ashwood pack." Her gaze flicked everywhere but my chest. "The steward hired me yesterday while you were in council." I remembered the interview only vaguely. Small omega, quiet voice, excellent references. Promised she didn't spook easily around alphas. Apparently that part had been true. Alara twisted her fingers together. "In my pack, we sleep communally. On long hunts or harsh winters, omegas lie against the strongest alpha to share heat. It's instinct. Last night I finished cleaning the east wing, saw you shivering without a shirt and—" She winced. My wolf moved before my manners did. I stared at her. Somewhere under the shock, my wolf rumbled with smug satisfaction. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that curling up on your king like a personal furnace is normal where you're from? For an alpha we've pledged ourselves to, yes." She blurted, then went scarlet. Not pledged like that. Household pledge. Service pledge. I swear I meant no offense, Your Majesty." A laugh tried to escape my throat, half hysterical. "You nearly gave your alpha king a heart attack, Omega." Her shoulders hunched. "If it helps, my wolf has excellent taste." Then, so quietly I almost missed it. "And if you're listening to this story right now, maybe subscribe for more alpha and omega tales like these and comment where you're watching from. It would really help the pack. Sorry. I was told humans like direct requests." Despite myself, I barked out a laugh. "You've been watching human story channels, haven't you?" She peeked up through her lashes. "I study, my king, so I can serve better." My heartbeat finally began to slow. The morning sun spilled over her hair, catching in the faint bond-marked scars at her throat, the ones that said she'd once been claimed and then cast aside. An abandoned omega. A war-broken alpha king. And apparently, one very confused bed. "Fine," I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "We're going to set some ground rules, Alara. But first I'm putting on pants." By the time I stalked into the kitchen, dressed in loose black sweats and a worn t-shirt, the castle smelled like heaven. Butter, honey, cinnamon. Coffee. Alara moved between the counters like she'd lived here for years, not a single day. She'd braided her hair back and changed into a simple gray dress and apron, but my wolf still recognized the curve of the omega who'd been plastered to our chests 20 minutes earlier. "Good morning, Your Majesty," she said without turning, wrist flicking as she poured batter onto a hot pan. "I hope your heart has stopped racing. It's still considering a mutiny," I muttered, dropping onto a stool at the long oak island. "And you're calling me Your Majesty after using me as a mattress? I thought the title might restore some dignity," she said primly. "Coffee?" She set a steaming mug in front of me exactly the way I liked it, strong, dark, barely sweetened. I hadn't told her my preference. That should have bothered me. Instead, a small part of me was impressed. How do you know how I take my coffee? I asked. Alara's lips twitched. The steward's notes. And the half-finished cups I washed last night from your study. She flipped a golden pancake with a clean, practiced motion. You work too late and eat too little, my king. You've known me for 18 hours. Omegas notice things, she said simply. I tried a sip. Perfect. Damn it. About earlier, I began. On Earth. On this side of the mountains, she corrected gently. Your southern packs are practically another planet. Fine. In my court, an Omega climbing into the Alpha King's bed usually means something very different than sharing heat. Her ears went pink. I understand that now. In Ashwood, no one questions when the Omega seeks warmth with the Alpha who leads them. My wolf saw you alone and cold and sad. Her voice softened on the last word. I reacted. The honesty in her tone caught me off guard. Most people in this castle tiptoed like I might snap at any moment, because sometimes I did. I don't require coddling, I said. Of course not. She slid a plate toward me, stacked high with pancakes studded with berries. But even an alpha can freeze to death if no one notices he's still standing outside in the snow after the battle's over. I paused with fork halfway to my mouth. The food was incredible. Crisp edges, soft center, syrup warm and thick. My growling stomach overruled my pride. I took another bite, watching her as she moved around my kitchen, humming under her breath, barefoot on old stone. This isn't in your job description, I said. Cooking like this. Saying things like that. Elites expect housekeepers, not healers. Alara shrugged one shoulder. But the moon gave Omega's soft hands and sharp instincts for a reason. We put homes, and wolves, back together. You talk like you've done this before. Her smile flickered. I have. For a pack that decided I wasn't worth keeping. Something hot flared in my chest. Anger. Protectiveness. My wolf pressed closer to the surface, drawn to that small, wounded confession like claws to blood. Who cast you out? I asked, voice lower than I meant it to be. She shook her head quickly. Old pack, old scars. I'm yours to worry about now, if you'll still have me after my unfortunate morning instincts. I looked at her, at the careful way she held herself, like a creature always half ready to flee. At the way her scent had already settled into the edges of the room, weaving through coffee and cinnamon and old stone. And I knew, with a sinking, inevitable certainty, that sending her away wasn't an option. Eat with me, I said gruffly. Then we'll talk rules. Her eyes widened. Alphas don't usually share a table with staff. I'm not alphas. I'm Kalen. Sit, Alara. She hesitated only a heartbeat, then obeyed, folding onto the stool beside mine. Close enough that our knees brushed. My wolf purred. Wonderful. This was going to be a disaster. We ate in a strangely comfortable silence. Every now and then Alara glanced at me as if checking I was still there, still real, then quickly dropped her gaze. When the plates were clean and my coffee was nearly gone, I cleared my throat. Right, I said. Ground rules. Her spine straightened. Of course, my king. Rule 1, I began. No sneaking into my bed. Ever. Under any circumstances. If for some reason you think I'm freezing to death again, you knock, you shout, you throw a blanket. You do not climb on top of me. A guilty smile tugged at her mouth. Understood. Rule 2, clothing. The castle is old, drafts everywhere. I know communal packs don't bother much with layers, but here, you wear something more than whatever that scrap from last night was. She looked genuinely confused. My shift? It barely reached mid-thigh. It covered all the important parts. She protested. My wolf supplied an image of exactly how well, or not, it had covered those important parts. I shut it down, hard. Important to me is being able to walk through my own home without having a heart attack. I said. So, proper clothes outside your room and the bathing halls. Dresses. Leggings. Gods, even a cloak. Just more. Her eyes gleamed with mischief. As you wish, Your Majesty. Anything else? Rule 3. I hesitated, feeling suddenly ridiculous. You call me Kalen when we're alone. If you're living in my house, cooking my food, apparently analyzing my coffee habits, we can drop the full titles in private. She blinked. You're sure? I nodded. Your king already woke up with you on his chest. The formalities feel a little pointless. Elara's smile turned soft, almost luminous. Very well. Kalen. She said the name carefully, like she was tasting it. My wolf practically rolled over. And in return, she added, I have one rule for you. I raised a brow. You're negotiating with your alpha? Omegas notice things, she reminded me. And we know when an alpha is about to break under the weight he's carrying. Something in my chest twisted. What rule? If you can't sleep, she said quietly, you call me. I'll make tea or food, or just sit in the hall outside your rooms so you know you're not alone. But you don't pace the corridors until dawn like a ghost and then pretend you're fine. The worst part was, I hadn't told her about the nights I wore grooves into the stone floors. She'd simply seen. I swallowed. That's a very impertinent rule, Elara. Yes, she said, gaze steady. Will you obey it? Silence stretched between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. My wolf reached toward hers, instinctive, curious. Yeah, I said finally, voice rough. I'll obey it. Her shoulders relaxed, the tension easing from her frame like I just granted a boon. Then we're agreed. Somewhere deep in my bones, something shifted. An old, frozen place thawed just a fraction. Dangerous, my rational mind warned. You do not let an Omega into your bed, your kitchen, and your nightmares. But my wolf only watched her and thought hours. The castle woke slowly around us. Servants padded through corridors with armfuls of linens. Guards rotated on the walls, ringing the morning bell. Somewhere, horses snorted in the stables and crows argued over the thawing snow in the courtyard. By midday, everyone knew about the new Omega. They also knew she'd made the Alpha King laugh at breakfast. Is it true? My beta, Rowan, asked later that day as we walked the inner ward. His scarred brow was raised in obvious amusement. The housekeeper crawled into your bed on her first night. I scowled. Someone's been gossiping. The castle cooks adore her already, Rowan said. Apparently she reorganized the entire pantry before dawn, sang with the scullery maids, and fixed old Tamsin's bad shoulder while the bread was rising. Of course she did, I muttered. Rowan bumped my arm with his fist. You're smiling. No, I'm not. You are. It's unnerving. Last time I saw that look on your face, we'd just survived the siege of Black Hollow and you'd found an extra barrel of mead. She's good at her job, I said, ignoring him. Efficient. Organized. Terrible sense of personal space. So she's an Omega. He shrugged. You could use one around here. We have Omegas. No, Rowan said. We have traumatized courtiers who flinch every time you walk into a room and refuse to correct you when you forget to eat. There's a difference. I didn't answer. We passed an open archway overlooking the inner gardens. There, kneeling in the snow-dusted herb beds, was Elara. She'd rolled her sleeves to the elbow, pale forearms dusted with soil. A large basket of withered plants sat beside her. Every so often, she brought a handful to her nose, inhaled, then shook her head and tossed them away. What is she doing? Rowan asked. Destroying my mother's prized apothecary, by the look of it, I said, and turned toward the stairs before I could think better of it. Elara looked up at our approach, face breaking into an easy smile that hit me like unexpected sunlight. Good afternoon, Your Maj, Kalen, she corrected quickly. I hope you don't mind. Half these herbs are dead or mislabeled. Your previous staff must have been guessing. My mother planted those, I said, more sharply than I meant to. The year before she died. The smile slipped from her face. I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Guilt pricked. The garden had been neglected for years, my mother's careful rose gone wild and tangled. Elara had already cleared more in one morning than I had in a decade. What are you planting instead? Rowan asked, dipping a hand into the basket. Healer's herbs, she said. For burns, nightmares, broken bones. And wolfthorn, in case your alpha decides to be stubborn about resting when he's injured. Rowan grinned. Keep her, he murmured to me under his breath. I heard that, Elara said without looking up. And the answer is no. I'm not a stray pup to be passed around. I chose this position. I'm choosing to stay. There's a difference. She said it with such quiet certainty that I felt something inside me straighten, like a banner catching wind. Then, I said, tell me what else you plan to change in my mother's garden. She glanced up, surprised. Everything that's hurting instead of healing. Her gaze held mine for a long, steady moment. My scars ached. My wolf leaned forward. Maybe, I thought, she hadn't climbed onto the wrong chest at all. That night, the castle refused to sleep. Storm clouds rolled over the mountains, dragging thunder in their wake. Wind howled through arrow slits and rattled shutters like ghostly claws. Old stone remembered sieges and blood and whispered them back into the dark. I knew the pattern. Nights like this were the ones that dug up the war. I lasted until a little after midnight before abandoning the bed entirely. Sheets tangled at my feet like accusing hands. My pulse pounded in my ears, the phantom echo of battle drums. Somewhere in the back of my mind, the old memory replayed, smoke screaming, my brother's hands slipping from mine in the crush. Stop. I dragged a cloak over my shoulders and paced the corridor outside my chambers. Back and forth, boots scuffing worn grooves in the stone. I told myself I was just checking the wards, listening for trouble on the wind. Mostly, I was trying to outrun my own thoughts. After the fifth lap, a warm glow spilled suddenly from the end of the hall. A door eased open. Elara stepped out, wrapped in a thick wool robe, hair loose down her back like a spill of moonlight. You lasted longer than I expected, she said softly. I stiffened. Couldn't sleep. Yes, she said. I noticed. Of course she had. An omega attuned to the emotional currents of a house felt every ripple like a shift in the tide. She lifted a small tray. Tea? Shouldn't you be, I don't know, not lurking in corridors in the middle of the night? Her mouth quirked. You made me promise, Kaelin. If you couldn't sleep, I'd be there. Omegas keep our promises. She patted closer, bare feet silent on stone. The steam from the cup curled up between us, fragrant with chamomile and some sharp, wild herb I couldn't name. What's in it? I asked. Things that coax the mind away from ghosts, she said. And things that remind the body it is still alive and safe. Her eyes searched my face. May I sit? I hesitated, then sank to the floor with my back against the wall. The stone was cold through my cloak. Elara folded gracefully beside me, hip brushing my thigh. She pressed the warm mug into my hands. Drink, she murmured. I sipped. Heat slid down my throat, spreading through my chest like a slow sunrise. The flavor was bitter at the edges, sweet in the middle. Grounding. You shouldn't see your king like this, I muttered. Pacing halls, shaking like a pup. My king is not a statue, Elara said. He's a wolf who's been fighting too long without rest. She tipped her head toward me. And he's sitting on the floor in a draft. That's my main concern at present. The absurdity of it punched a laugh out of me. Thunder cracked overhead. I flinched before I could stop myself. Her hand, small, warm, found my forearm, fingers curling just enough to anchor. Here, she whispered. When it's too loud in your head, focus on something smaller. The feel of the cup. The weight of your cloak. The fact that my nose is freezing because I forgot slippers. I glanced down. Her toes were indeed pink from the chill. "You're ridiculous," I said. "Yes," she agreed. "But you're not pacing anymore." I realized, slowly, that my breathing had evened out. The knot in my chest had loosened. I could still feel the bruise of old memory, but it no longer threatened to swallow me whole. We sat like that for a long time. Storm outside. Silence between us. Her hand stayed on my arm, not clinging, just there. "Do you have them too?" I asked at last. "Ghost nights." "Often," she said. "Except mine don't smell like smoke. They smell like wet stone and closed doors." I frowned. "Closed doors?" She watched the dancing candle flame at the end of the hall. "When an Omega is cast out, the pack locks every door behind her. So when I dream, I run from handle to handle, pounding, begging. And each one shuts in my face." The quiet fury that statement lit inside me almost surprised me with its strength. "They were fools," I said. "Perhaps," she said. "But their foolishness led me here. To a king who paces rather than rots. I'll take that trade." My throat felt suddenly tight. I took another sip of tea to hide it. "You don't have to sit in corridors with me," I said. "You could just leave a kettle by the hearth and go back to bed." She smiled without looking at me. "I told you this morning, Kaelin. The moon gave Omegas soft hands and sharp instincts for a reason. We put homes back together." Her voice softened. "Even when the home is 6'3" stubborn, and refuses to admit he's lonely." 6'2", I muttered automatically. She bumped my shoulder with hers. "Point proven." The storm slowly moved on. The thunder became distant grumbling, like an old god complaining in its sleep. My eyelids grew heavy. Somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, my head tipped sideways until it rested lightly against hers. I should have pulled away. Instead, I slept. When I woke, the corridor was empty. For a brief, disorienting instant, I thought I'd imagined it all: the tea, the storm, the Omega sitting watch beside me like some stubborn guardian. Then my nose twitched. Her scent lingered on my cloak: wildflowers, wood smoke, and a faint hint of flour. She must have gone down to the kitchens at dawn. In my chambers, someone had laid out fresh clothes and drawn the curtains back just enough to let in a soft thread of light. A second mug of tea waited on the bedside table, still steaming. A folded scrap of parchment leaned against it. "Your Majesty, next time, try sleeping in an actual bed after I leave you in the corridor. P.S. I mended the tear in your cloak. Stop catching it on that loose stone outside your door." My lips twitched helplessly. Rowan found me 10 minutes later, staring at the note like an idiot. "You're doing it again," he said. "Doing what?" Smiling. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "If you keep this up, the council will think you've been replaced by a changeling." "Maybe I have," I said dryly. "The real me is still pacing somewhere." "Sure." Rowan's gaze slid to the note in my hand. "She's good for you, you know. She's a housekeeper. She's an Omega who's not afraid to argue with you," he corrected. "We haven't had one of those since your mother." The comparison made something crack quietly inside my ribs. "Don't," I said. Rowan held up his hands. "Fine. No lectures. But the pack watches you, Kaelin. They feel it when you're one bad night away from losing yourself. If she steadies you, they'll cling to her like a lifeline. That's not her job. It's what Omegas do," he said. "Whether anyone asks them to or not." I hated that he was right. The next days slid into a strange new rhythm. Elara moved through the castle like a quiet storm, appending everything that had settled into complacent decay during the war. She reorganized the kitchen so efficiently that the head cook, who'd ruled those ovens for 20 years, alternated between cursing and praising her. She instituted a system in the laundry that meant I no longer found battle leathers shoved in with council robes. She opened windows that had been nailed shut since the siege. And she talked to people. Not in the careful, terrified way courtiers spoke to their king, In the easy, open way of someone who saw everyone, from stable boys to generals, as pieces of the same puzzle. She listened. She remembered names. She laughed, bright and unexpected, and the stone halls, so used to echoing with orders and screams, started catching those sounds and tossing them back like light. At first, the pack watched her warily. An outsider. A cast-off Omega from a distant territory. A woman who'd somehow ended up sharing midnight corridors with their alpha. But then old Tamsin's shoulder stopped aching. The kitchen boys who always burned their fingers on hot pans suddenly had salve before they could yelp. The youngest stable hand, who flinched whenever someone raised a hand too quickly, started lingering in the gardens while Alara worked, shadowing her like a nervous pup. "It's witchcraft," Rowan said one afternoon as we watched her teaching the boy how to coax life from a stubborn rosemary bush. "It's kindness," I said. "Same thing to some alphas." "Not this one," I muttered. He shot me a sidelong look. "Then maybe you should tell her that." I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I liked the distance. Liked watching her from the edges of my own home, where she moved comfortably and I did not. She was rebuilding the castle one small act at a time, and somehow, impossibly, that felt more dangerous than any blade. Because walls I'd carefully bricked up inside myself were starting to remember that once, long ago, they'd had windows. The first real test of our careful truce came on market day. Once a month, traders from the scattered mountain packs were allowed inside the castle walls. They set up stalls along the inner courtyard, hawking everything from salted meat to charms against bad dreams. The air buzzed with scents and voices, with wolf and human and something wilder woven through it all. It used to be my favorite day as a child. After the war, it became a chore. Another set of eyes to watch, another crowd that might hide a blade. Rowan and I walked the market together, guards shadowing us at a discreet distance. I tried to look approachable and not like someone who'd rather be back in his study drowning in paperwork than smiling at strangers. We turned a corner, and my wolf stiffened. Across the courtyard, standing beside a stall piled high with dried pelts, were 3 wolves wearing ashwood colors. Alara's former pack. They smelled like smoke and pine and old iron. Their beta, a hard-eyed male with a jagged scar across his jaw, leaned idly against the stall post, laughing at something the trader said. He caught sight of me, straightened, bowed with exaggerated respect. "Your Majesty," he called. "A glorious day to trade." Rowan's hand hovered near his sword. "We can walk away," he murmured. "You owe them nothing." I almost did. Then I saw movement at the far edge of the courtyard. Alara, carrying a basket of linens, froze as her gaze landed on the familiar colors. Her face drained of blood. Her fingers clenched tight around the wicker handle, knuckles whitening. The ashwood beta followed my gaze. His smile sharpened. "Well, well," he drawled. "If it isn't our little runaway Omega." The words were louder than they needed to be. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. Alara stood very still. "Careful," Rowan said under his breath. "He's baiting you." I was already moving. The crowd parted as I crossed the courtyard, each step deliberate. My wolf was close to the surface now, furious and cold. The ashwood wolves straightened instinctively, spines bowing under the pressure of my aura. "Alpha Kalen," their beta said, lips curling. "We hadn't realized our former servant had found new employment. I trust she's not been too much trouble." I stopped between him and Alara, putting my body deliberately in the line of his gaze. "Her name," I said, "is Alara. She is under my protection. And you will address her with the respect owed to any wolf who stands in my territory." The man's eyes flashed. "With respect, Your Majesty, Ashwood affairs are no concern of the mountain throne. She was given to us as a bargaining Omega and walked away from her duty. That stain follows her." Behind me, Alara's scent sharpened with hurt and shame. Heat flared behind my ribs. "Strange," I said calmly. "Because from where I stand, the only stain I smell in this courtyard is cowardice." A murmur rippled through the market. The beta's jaw clenched. You insult my pack. No, I said. Your pack insulted the moon when it cast out an Omega who done nothing but survive the bond that broke her. You call that a stain? My voice dropped, power threading each word. I call it strength. Silence fell, heavy and charged. The Ashwood wolves shifted uneasily. Elara hadn't moved, but I could feel her behind me, a small, steady presence braced for impact. You have no right, the beta began. I have every right, I cut in. This is my territory. My court. My Omega. You will not come into my home and speak of her like a discarded object. The word came out before I'd fully thought it through. My Omega. My wolf hummed in fierce approval. Elara sucked in a shaky breath. The beta's gaze flicked between us, calculation sparking. So that's how it is, he said softly. The rumors were true then. The broken king and the cast-off Omega. Fitting. He bowed again, shallow and mocking. Enjoy your toy, Alpha. When you tire of her, send her back. We're always in need of entertainment. He turned on his heel. I didn't realize I was moving until Rowan's hand clamped around my wrist, fingers bruising. Kaelin, he hissed. Not here. Not like this. My vision had narrowed. Every instinct screamed to drag the Ashwood wolf back and show him exactly what happened to those who insulted what was mine. Elara's voice reached me like a small, steady bell through the red haze. Kaelin. Just my name. Quiet. Firm. I closed my eyes. Breathed. When I opened them, the Ashwood wolves were disappearing through the gates, laughter riding their scent like poison. The market noise slowly resumed around us, as if nothing had shifted. Everything had. I turned. Elara stood with the basket still clutched in her hands, shoulders hunched like she was bracing for a blow. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. They'll spread tales. Say you claimed a ruined Omega. I don't care what they say. My voice came out rougher than intended. You're not ruined. Her eyes glimmered. You can't fix me by declaring it, Kaelin. Maybe not, I said. But I can make sure no one else gets to define what you are. For a heartbeat, something raw and fragile flickered across her face. Then she dipped her head, lashes veiling her expression. As you wish, my king, she murmured. But the way she said, my, made my wolf's heart stutter. The confrontation changed everything. Not in obvious ways at first. Elara still ran my household with terrifying efficiency. She still scolded the guards for skipping meals and mended the servants' clothes between tasks. She still hummed under her breath when she thought no one was listening. But a new thread wove itself into the fabric between us. A tension. A question. She kept more distance now, physically. Where she once brushed my arm without thinking, her hands now hovered just shy of contact. Where she had sat beside me at the kitchen island, our knees touching, she now chose the stool one seat over. Yet her scent clung to everything I touched, like she couldn't quite keep herself from moving through my orbit. That night, I found another note on my bedside table. You didn't have to call me, my Omega, in front of them. But, thank you. P.S. I put extra honey in your tea. Today was a lot. I stared at the looping letters until they blurred, then folded the scrap carefully and tucked it into the small box in my desk where I kept things I refused to admit mattered. Days passed. The castle breathed in, out. On the morning of the full moon, the seer arrived. She was small and ancient, wrapped in a cloak that smelled of herbs and smoke and something older. Her eyes were clouded white, but she walked the corridors without stumbling, bare feet sure on stone she'd never seen. I met her in the council chamber. Rowan and the other advisors stood along the walls, watching. Alpha Kaelin, the seer rasped. You called for guidance. I called for a status report, I corrected. On the health of my lands. The strength of the wards. The usual. She smiled, a slow, knowing curve. Kings rarely ask for what they truly need. Before I could respond, the chamber doors opened. Elara slipped inside, arms full of ledgers. She froze when she saw the assembled council, then dipped into a quick curtsy. "My apologies," she said. "I didn't realize." "It's fine," I said. "You can leave those on the table, Elara." She obeyed, moving carefully around the edges of the room. The seer's head turned sharply as she passed, nostrils flaring. "Ah," the old woman whispered. "There it is." I frowned. "There what is?" "The thread," the seer said. "The one tugging at your wolf every time she breathes." Heat crawled up my neck. Rowan coughed to hide a grin. Elara went very still. The seer shuffled closer to her, eyes unfocused yet somehow piercing. "Come here, child," she murmured. "Let an old woman see what the moon's been weaving while no one was watching." Elara shot me a panicked look. "You don't have to," I began. "It's all right," she said quietly. "I've been measured and weighed by worse." She stepped forward. The seer lifted a trembling hand and pressed 2 fingers lightly to Elara's throat, where faint scar tissue marked the place an old bond had once sat. She inhaled deeply. "Oh," she said softly. "Oh, Moon, you have been busy." My heart thudded painfully. "What do you see?" I asked, hating the edge in my voice. "2 wolves," she said. "Both hurt. Both stubborn. Tied together by a thread neither of them wanted and both of them need." Her blind gaze swung toward me. "You should have called me sooner, boy." "I'm not a boy." "To the moon you are," she said. "You pace your halls like a pup who lost the trail and pretends he meant to circle all along." Rowan made a strangled sound that might have been a laugh. Elara looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her. "Is there a point to this?" I ground out. "Beyond insulting your king?" "Yes," the seer said calmly. "Sit." I sat. She placed her hands, one on my chest and one on Elara's, and closed her eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then something vast and ancient stirred in the room, like a sleeping creature rolling over in its den. The air thickened. My wolf lunged toward that presence instinctively, teeth bared, then stilled as warmth flooded through my veins. Images flickered behind my eyes. Elara in the garden, earth on her hands. Me pacing the corridor. 2 wolves circling the same wound from opposite sides. And between us, a thin silver thread, glowing brighter with each shared breath. The seer released us with a soft exhale. "Well," she said. "That explains the storms." I blinked, disoriented. "What did you do?" "Nothing," she said. "I only looked. The moon already chose. You 2 are the ones pretending not to notice." Elara's voice shook. "Chose what?" The seer smiled, not unkindly. "You're not just an alpha and an omega sharing a roof, child. You're fated. Broken in complementary ways. If you stop running long enough, you might even heal." The room went silent. My heart pounded loud enough that I was sure everyone could hear it. Fated. The word echoed through me like another thunderclap. I looked at Elara. She looked back. And for the first time, I let myself wonder what would happen if I stopped pretending I didn't already know. After the seer left, the castle didn't feel quieter. It felt listening. Every corridor hummed with a low, barely perceptible tension, like stone holding its breath. The guards walked slower. The servants whispered more carefully. And Elara, she moved like she was afraid to disturb the air itself. We avoided each other all day. Not out of anger. Out of fear. Because the moment our eyes met, something in my chest tightened painfully, as if an invisible thread had gone taut between us. My wolf paced beneath my skin, restless, agitated, unsettled in a way no battle ever caused. Fated. The word scraped through my thoughts like a blade. Kings were not meant for fate. We were meant for decisions. For war. For sacrifice. Not for invisible threads tying our souls together without permission. But near midnight, when the castle fell into its deepest quiet, sleep once again refused to come. I stood from my bed. The pull guided my steps unerringly down the hall. My hand lifted before I could stop it, and knocked on Alara's door. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, soft footsteps. The door opened just enough for her amber eyes to shine through the darkness. "Yes?" she whispered. "I can't sleep," I admitted. Her breath caught. Then she stepped aside, and I crossed the threshold. Alara's room was small, warm, and simple. A narrow bed. A stone hearth glowing faintly. The faint scent of crushed herbs and wild flowers clung to the air. One carved wooden wolf sat alone on the windowsill, watching over everything. I sat on the edge of her bed like a boy summoned for judgment, shoulders heavy with things I could not name. She remained standing. "You feel it too?" I said quietly. "The pull." "Yes," she answered without hesitation. She finally sat beside me, but left a careful, deliberate hand-span of space between us. The restraint hurt more than closeness would have. "I've felt it since the market," she whispered. "Since you stood in front of me. Since the seer spoke. Since the first night in your bed, if I'm being honest." Silence stretched between us. "I'm afraid," she said at last. "So am I." She looked at me then. Truly looked at me. "If the bond forms, it will change everything. You won't just be a king. I won't just be a housekeeper. I know. And if it breaks?" My jaw tightened. "Then one of us won't survive it." For the first time since I'd known her, she reached for me first. And our fingers brushed. It happened 3 days later. Training had always been my refuge. Steel did not lie. Pain was honest. That morning, I pushed harder than I should have, drove my body beyond its limit just to silence my thoughts. I misjudged a strike. The blow landed wrong. White-hot pain detonated through my shoulder. I staggered, armor shrieking as I dropped to one knee. Across the yard, Alara screamed. Not in fear. In pain. She collapsed as if struck by the same blow, clutching her shoulder, face drained of color. The entire training yard froze. I felt it then, a violent echo of my injury flowing through her as if our nerves had woven together. Rowan was beside me instantly. "Kaelin," he said sharply. The bond just surged. Guards rushed to Alara's side. She gasped, trembling, eyes locked on mine across the yard. We were no longer linked by possibility. We were linked by blood and nerve and pain. That night, the ward stones flared. The castle howled. And the world shifted beneath our feet. We tried to deny it. For 3 days. Separate schedules. Separate halls. No shared meals. No late-night tea. No accidental touches. The entire castle bent around our avoidance like a living thing holding its breath. But distance did not weaken the bond. It strangled it tighter. Sleep vanished. My wolf raged endlessly beneath my skin. The pull became a constant ache, sharp, demanding, unrelenting. On the 4th night, the alarm horns screamed. A rogue pack breached the outer border under cover of storm and shadow. Steel sang. Wolves roared. Fire erupted along the walls. I reached the battlements just as the first wave hit. And then, through smoke and chaos, I saw her. Alara ran toward the battlefield. Not away from it. Straight toward me. An Omega charging into war with nothing but terror and love in her eyes. Mad. Brave. Mine. Smoke swallowed the courtyard. Steel rang against steel as the rogue pack surged through the shattered outer gate. Torches fell. Wolves screamed. Blood streaked the stone. And through all of it, Alara ran. No armor. No blade. Just a heartbeat pulled forward by a bond that no longer cared about fear or instinct. I felt her terror like ice in my veins as I fought blindly through enemies toward her scent. "Alara!" I roared. She tripped over fallen rubble, skidding on blood-slick stone. A rogue alpha lunged from the smoke, jaws wide. The bond snapped tight. Power ripped through me. I did not remember crossing the distance, only the sound of bone breaking beneath my fists. The rogue Alpha flew across the courtyard like a rag doll, smashing into the far wall in a spray of blood and stone. Elara gasped as I caught her against my chest. She shook violently, hands clutching my armor. I couldn't breathe, she whispered. You were in danger. So were you, I growled. She looked up at me, eyes blazing, terrified, unyielding. Then we were exactly where we belong. The pack saw it. All of them. The bond blazing between Alpha and Omega in the heart of battle. And the rogue pack understood what they had truly awakened. The battle broke moments later. The rogues scattered, shattered under the force of a united pack defending not just land, but a bond they now recognized as sacred. By dawn, the dead were counted. By sunrise, the elders arrived. They stood in a wide half-circle beneath the fading moon as Elara and I faced them together. No chains. No claims. No ceremony yet. Only truth. The bond has formed, the eldest said. Unsealed. Unrestrained. Elara's voice shook, but she stood tall. I did not seek it for power. I did not seek it to escape my past. It chose us. And you, King? The elder asked me. Do you accept what this bond demands? I looked at Elara. At the Omega who had run into fire for me. At the cost of my solitude, I said. At the cost of my fear, I said. At the cost of my crown if necessary. I accept. The elders bowed. Somewhere deep in the earth, the ward stones pulsed not in warning, but in blessing. The bond ceremony was held at dusk. No chains. No blood demands. No public ownership. Only moonlight. Breath. Hands. Elara stood barefoot in the center of the stone's circle. I approached her slowly, deliberately, not as ruler but as wolf. You are not my property, I said quietly. You are my equal. Tears streaked her face. Then claim me willingly, not above me. I dropped to one knee. Gasps rippled through the watching pack. I pressed my forehead to hers. The bond sealed not with dominance, but with choice. Silver fire wrapped around us both. And the mountain itself seemed to exhale. Peace did not arrive like thunder. It came quietly. Morning tea returned to the corridor. Laughter returned to the kitchens. The castle learned how to breathe again. Elara walked openly at my side now. Not behind me. Not beneath me. Beside. The pack followed her not because they were ordered to, but because she listened. The Alpha did not become softer. He became steadier. When winter returned, it was harsher than any in living memory. And yet, the halls were warm. The fire never died. The Alpha no longer paced alone. And the Omega no longer dreamed of locked doors. On the coldest night of the year, Elara curled against me beneath thick furs and whispered softly. You're not freezing anymore. No, I answered. And neither are you. They would tell the story for generations afterward. Not as a tale of conquest, but as a tale of warmth. Of a king who learned that strength did not mean solitude. Of an Omega who ran into fire and rebuilt a kingdom with tea, kindness, and unbearable courage. And of a bond that was not born from fate alone, but from the choice to stay together. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more, like the video, and comment your favorite part. It helps me out so much, and I truly appreciate every single one of you.